Hey friends, welcome back to Mustard Seed Homesteading. If you're new to my channel, my name is Megan and I'm really glad that you're here. What I do on this channel is share a lot of garden tours, Azure hauls, and other garden and preserving videos in between. But what I want to show you today is my garden journal / planner. I like to keep my garden planned out as much as I can, and I'm going to go through everything that I do in order to know what to plant and where to plant it. So let's get started. Okay, so before I sit down and I show you my planner and my binder and just explain everything that I do and why I do it, I do want to share that I'm definitely one that loves to have different ways of organizing the garden, meaning that not only do I love a good old piece of paper and pencil and a ruler, which is what I'm going to show you today, but I also do use apps and I also do use my phone. So for instance, if you have the little note section on your phone, I do like to use that where I will go in the garden and I will make a list of things that need to get done, like to-do lists. And then as I do them, I will check them off on my phone just because it's quick and easy. My phone's usually with me. But then when it comes to actually planning out all of my beds, because I have 10 beds actually, 10 beds. And I have a whole bunch of buckets and bags, as you can see behind me. And so I need to be able to write out what has been planted and where to plant certain starts. But I also do it because not only do I make it an organizer, where I organize and I know where to plant my certain starts, but I also use it as a journal. So then that way, if something didn't go well, let's say the bucket, something didn't go well in the bucket, but it did really good in one of my beds, I'm going to write a note down and I'm going to write as much information as I can so that either the next season I do something differently or I take into consideration the time of the year, the temperatures, and so forth. And so I'm going to go through everything that I do, and hopefully this sparks some inspiration or some ideas in your head to start your own journal or your own organizer in your garden, or to help you in the way you organize and plan your garden. So let me show you my binder. First, I have my coffee though before we sit down with the binder. It's just to have a nice cup of hot coffee during this cool weather, this winter weather. I have a homemade latte with pumpkin spice and cinnamon. It is delicious, so grab a cup of coffee and let's go through my binder. So here's my binder / planner. It's nothing fancy. Now I will say that I have purchased a lot of planners as well as just plain old calendars in the past. And while they're all great in their own way, they just haven't worked for me. And then when GREENSTALK came out with their journal and a PDF form of their journal where you can purchase it and download as many copies as you want, I started using it and it just worked very well for me. So before I go in my binder and I show you everything that I do, I want to show you the PDF pages that you can purchase from GREENSTALK and then download as much as possible. So here's the just a front page. You don't have to print these, and that's the wonderful thing about the PDF form with the GREENSTALK, is that you can print whatever pages will work for your journal, which I really do like that. Now, I'm sure there's other PDFs that you could get in, you could look up different planners. This is just what has worked for me, and I'm just sharing what has worked for me. So let me try to zoom in here. So the first page, you can write, your location, your zone, your highest and lowest temperature, last frost, first frost, just so you have all the important information in one spot, which I do really like that. And then the next sheet, now this is more for their GREENSTALK vertical planters, and this is just some successful setups and just some tips that they add in here. You don't have to print this off if you don't have a GREENSTALK, or you don't have to do that. Now I did because I do have their GREENSTALKs. I have a lot of them. And then they also add in here like what works good with what planter, which I appreciate that. I actually have their trifold in my GREENSTALK journal that I'll show you when I open it. Now comes the calendar part. So they have these really pretty little, front pages. I did print them off just to make, my journal, a little bit nicer and prettier. But what I like about this is they have two different types of calendars. So they have this where the squares are not very large. You can add notes, you can add the year and the month. And then the other one that they have is they have a larger square, which is kind of like this. Let me zoom back out. And so then that way you have a lot more space to write versus the shorter square. Now, the way I've done it is the shorter square I use more for like, especially in the summer, because I use this for the summer. It's the first time I used it. And I did that more for like a fertilizing watering schedule. And then this is just like when I planted and what I planted on what date to kind of keep track of when I planted certain starts. So here's their two different types of calendars. Then they have a planting map. This is probably my favorite, or actually, this is one of my favorite ones. The planting map is more for the green stalks, and then I'm going to show you the grids and the papers that I use for my beds, my bags, and buckets. So I did attempt to use this one at first, and while this one is really good, and again, I love how they give two different varieties, or two different ways, I should say, of organizing and writing out your plants, your starts, any comments, the date that you planted for the green stalk. So this is one of them, but this one is what worked better for me. And at the top, they'll put, you can put which green stalk. So let's say you have 5 and they're in order. You can write, number 1 through 5, and then you can write how many tiers, because they either have the original or their leaf. So it's either a 5 tier or 7 tier. And so for the leaf tier, I mean, that would be the 7, and then the original would be the 5. So you would just write that in. Just extra information for you as you're planning your garden. But this is what worked best for me because it has all 7 of the tiers. And then, so then that way you can use all 7 if you have the leaf green stalk, or you would just fill it up until number 5 if you had the original green stalk tier. Now the next one they have is the plant log. I don't really use the plant log that much. For some people this might be a huge benefit. I just have not used this that much. So with this they have 2 different ways it's up and down. They have a horizontal and a vertical. And really it's just to list your plants, the planting date, purchase from, comments, a rating for it. So it just helps you to keep track of whether or not you liked certain plants from certain places. And so then that way you don't forget. Now I may end up using that down the road. I just did not find that a benefit right now. And then this is the list section. So this is more for like inventory and supplies, so you can keep track of what it is that you purchased. If you've ordered it, cost. This is just another way to stay organized with expenses and things that you need for the garden. And then this is just a to-do list. This is kind of nice. I guess I could take this out in the garden instead of my phone. I just find it easier to grab my phone and do a to-do list on there. And then here is where the notes section. This is what I use to draw out my garden in the back, and I cannot wait to show you in the binder. But they have a grid section, and then they just have the lines, and then this is what I journal on to take notes of what worked and what didn't work, what I liked and what I didn't like in that bed. And then this is just like a back cover that you can put into the, the back of your binder just for, some prettiness. So these are the blank sheets. I just wanted to quickly go over those with you because they do give you a lot of different options that you could use in their PDF if you purchase it from them, to pretty much just kind of put your own journal together. Okay, so when I open up my binder, all the way to the left is the trifold that I was talking about with GREENSTALK. This kind of just gives you an idea of what grows best in which one. And then this is the grid that I was talking about. So I brought out my summer, I call this my summer journal / planner. And I'm gonna kind of go through everything that I did, but this is how I drew out my garden. And then I numbered each bed and drew what was where at that time during the season. So let me go through these tabs that I have to organize this binder even more. So the first one here is the calendar. Now, I really do like the calendar because it's another way pretty much for me to journal. Now I will say this, I don't use the calendar to say, okay, I'm going to plant this day and this day. Because my life is super busy, I really just plant when I can. And so the way I use this is I will just write out what I am. When I do get a chance to plant something, I'll write out what I planted that day, what I was able to do that day. That's pretty much how I garden because, you know, my life is really busy and I don't always have time to come out here. But then that way, let's say I planted broccoli in November, it didn't do very well, but I replanted it in December. I can go back to my calendar and say, okay, I planted it in November, it didn't do well, so next time I'm not gonna plant it in November. Not that that happened, I'm just throwing an example out there. And then what I started doing was putting a paper clip so that when the months were done, I just paper clipped it. And then that way, as soon as I was able, you know, I grabbed the paper clip, I was to the month that we were at. So now I use both calendars. So here's the month of December. There's really not much. I was gonna actually start writing the temperatures to kind of keep a, you know, keep record of what the temperatures were in December of 2024, but I've just been super busy and I haven't had a chance to do that. Now I did do it in November. I did write the temperatures in November, which I'm glad that I did because that's when we were supposed to hit our first frost, and we actually did not hit our first frost on November 6th like they say that we're supposed to have it, or at least around that time. It actually came much, much later. Now, here's the full calendar for the month of December. As you can see here, I didn't do a ton. I actually didn't even number these yet. I have to do that. But like, for instance, on this day, I know I did this on this day and I probably meant to number it and I didn't. But like, for instance, I wrote the note on my calendar here that I finished cleaning up bags and the straw, and I strawed the driveway. So in my driveway, all those bags and buckets that had all of the green beans, I cleaned them all up and I strawed them. So then that way I have a note that I did not clean those up until December. That has worked for me to do it this way. I know I will be filling up the month of December here a little bit soon because I have a ton of starts that need to get planted. So I will be filling this up and I need to number up the dates here. Now, the next tab that I have are my GREENSTALKs tab. Now, I've recently, what's the word? I made, oh, here we go, designated, there's the word. I've recently designated certain GREENSTALKs for certain things, and I did write that out, so you're not gonna see a whole lot written for them just because I've made, for instance, 2 GREENSTALKs are for, I did write them right here. 2 GREENSTALKs are for sweet potatoes, and I wrote under which one they were, so if it was the original or the leaf. I have 11 original and I have 6 leaf. So 2 of them are designated for sweet potatoes, 2 for potatoes, 4 for onions. 1 is strawberries with a mint on top. The other one is a mojito mint on top with the rest of them perennials. And then I left 1 for whatever I want to plant for the season. I do think, if I remember, I planted some kale, a whole bunch of kale in that one down below. Now with regards to the leaf, I need to switch this. I made 4 of them for garlic. 1 is for strawberries and 1, oh, I did change it right here. And then 1 is spearmint on top, where the rest I kind of made for whatever I want to plant for the season. So I did do this on purpose because not only have I found really good success with growing all these things in the GREENSTALK, but it does kind of make my life easier knowing that these are designated so I can focus more on the backyard garden instead of constantly switching stuff up, because it does, I ended up getting bag and bed happy and GREENSTALK happy, and I just have too much for one person. So I ended up designating GREENSTALKs for certain stuff. So this is my GREENSTALK section, and then I went even further and I did tabs for the 5 tiers and I did tabs for the 7 tiers. So then that way they're super, super, super organized. And I did label, you know, ones that were potatoes, ones that were sweet potatoes and garlic and so forth. And then the next one is the plant log. So again, I said that I really don't use the plant log, but I put it in here because, you know, sometimes I change my mind about things, and I may come in here and I may, you know, put some stuff. Now I did try starting something and I put Texas super sweet onions because I purchased them from Dixondale Farms last year. And you can see that right there. And they were really good. So I don't know, I just didn't have time to fill in the rest of them. I think as I've been gardening, I know which ones I've likened a lot more than others. So I just haven't found the need to fill this out. But I may down the road, I don't know. And then the next one is the list. Now, I did start writing stuff down. These are like the 3 main staples in my garden. And if you've seen my videos, I love black cow, I love Bacto soil, and I love my straw for the garden. Those are like my 3 favorites. So I wrote them in there, but again, I haven't really found this to be a benefit for me to use to stay organized in my garden. And then the next one it's under notes, but this is really the planners that I put together. So I'm going to quickly show you in here, and then I'm going to show you this last so that you can see how I also journal as well as write it out and organize. So I wrote upper level and I wrote lower level because I have my backyard garden, which is the upper level, and then in the lower level by my driveway is with this tab. So let me go through this really quickly. So this right here is the layout of my garden right now as far as winter goes. So I have bed 1, 2, all the way to 10. I could say that I have 11, but it's just a little box of comfrey. And then these 2 are my overwinter pepper beds. And then I do have a few bags right here and then some bags right here. This right here helps me tremendously with keeping the garden completely organized. And then you'll see these little circles over here. Those are my big flower pots, and then little flower pots that are around the flower pot. That's probably more for summer, but I don't do anything with those because I strictly use those for flowers. So the reason I number these is because the next page you're gonna see is, well, actually, I take that back. The next 2 pages, because I do have bags and buckets in the back, well, I have notes here. So I'll always have a note section behind any page that I map or write out, just because, let's say there was something about the layout I didn't like, I will jot a note down. Or there's something that, maybe the sun wasn't hitting a certain way during the winter time on one of the beds or the flower pots or whatever, I'll jot that note down there so that I have that for reference. Okay, so the next page is basically then the next section of my garden, which are the pallets. And then I wrote woods back here so that I know that when I turn this, these are the ones that's closest to the garden. And then back here are the woods. That's the way I organize it. So I have 4 pallets here and I have 2 pallets here. I have a row of very large, I think they're 25-gallon bags. And then I have more pallets in the back. And then I drew circles that represented how many buckets are on that pallet. And then the next page is notes, in case I want to take notes for those. So that is the whole entire layout of my garden, is between those 2 pages. Now, this is where, or why I labeled my beds 1, 2, 3, and so forth, is because in the upper right-hand corner, I will write bed 1, and, oh, sorry, it's zooming. Okay, let's try this again. So the first one here is, the reason I numbered all of the beds is because I wanted to be able to have one grid for bed 1 and so forth, if that makes any sense. So that way what I do is I will write what I planted in each square. So for instance, if I planted a broccoli and then I added maybe some onions on the side or whatever it is that I planted, I would literally just write everything out in this bed. And then if there's something I liked or I didn't like, that's where I would write the notes in the next section. And this is what has really helped me stay organized. Okay, I was just kind of moving because we're losing a little bit of light out here, and I wanted to do it out here so that I can show you the garden and how everything is laid out at the very, very end. Now, for instance, this page, you can see I wrote everything in here. Now, I will write out the full name, and then what I'll do is I'll just abbreviate it. Like you can see, RB is Rapini Rob. But what I'll end up doing is, if something is planted, I will highlight it so that I know that it has been planted and it's completely done. Now, these are my wood beds. These have not been planted yet, and actually because of all the squirrels and everything being eaten by them, I might have to erase this and completely redo it. But see, that's the beauty of pen and paper for me, is that I can just come in, or pen and pencil, I mean, I could just come in, erase that square, and put a different plant start in there. And then here's notes again. But let me give you an example. Okay, so here's one that is completely highlighted because I planted it. So this is my garlic bed that I did. And so you can see I wrote 9 here and 9 here and 5 on this side. So when I looked up garlic, I learned that you can plant as much as 9 in one square. So what I did was I experimented and I did one side 9 garlic, the other side 5, and then I planted a few extra at the end that I had. And so once I planted it, it was put in there. I put the variety, what I planted, and how many. I highlighted it so I knew this bed was completely done. And so now once I go ahead and I harvest these come the spring, I can't wait to harvest these with you all. I'm gonna write down any notes or anything, like for instance, if I liked how they came out with 9 per square, or if I liked it better 5 per square, or maybe next time just do 2 per square. That way I can jot notes in case I want to change anything up next time. Now, that is the backyard garden. The lower garden is, for instance, these are all of my metal beds that are against the retaining wall. I'll write notes for those. Those are pretty much herbs, so I will be able to write out any notes of what I liked having the herbs in there, if they came back after winter, if they didn't come back after winter, if I decide to change up an herb and do something different. And then this is my garlic bed that's down there. And then I want to show you the driveway because it really does help to have things mapped out. Now, I have switched things around in the past, which is exactly why I do these maps by season. And so you can see here my driveway, it curves here because I have a retaining wall that curves this way. And so these are all the bags. Actually, no, I take this back. Or I take that back. These are all the green stalks. And then I have a row of bags against the retaining wall. And I'll show you that in a second. So these are all of the green stalks and they're labeled and marked with what is put in there. And the next page are all the bags against the retaining wall. And so what I did was I just drew all the circles that represented all of the bags. And then these numbers, let me zoom in a little bit. These numbers right here represent how many Bellstar broccoli starts I want to plant in these bags. Now, because we had a lot of squirrel damage, I might have to switch this up. It's just been really busy these last 2 weeks, give or take. But all I'll do, and that's the beauty of having pencil and paper, is just erase it and then rewrite what I do plan to plant in these bags. And then that way I can go back over to the note section and I can, on the next page, and I can write down, you know, changes that I've made. And let's say the Bellstar broccoli didn't work and I had to replant something. I could just come over here, erase it, and rewrite something different, or put it in the note section, say, hey, Bellstar didn't work well, so I put this other variety of broccoli in there that worked amazing. And so this is how I keep myself completely organized. Now I'm going to show you the one that's completed from the summertime. This was my layout, and really all I did, there wasn't a whole bunch of notes. I didn't really have any notes about the layout of the garden. But you can see I wrote every single thing out. I crammed everything in the summer, so you're going to see a lot written. But all I did was write everything out that was in that square. I highlighted it when it was planted. And then whatever notes I wanted to take, so for instance, I just wrote something very simple. It did well. Had a slow start. This is the pepper bed that we ended up overwintering. Decided to overwinter bed and added buckwheat. Sorry, it's getting out of focus. Added buckwheat for extra nutrition. And that's pretty much all I did. Now, when it comes to writing out how it did for overwinter, I will definitely write that in this planner. And so now what this is, and I stapled it, now what this has become is my summer of 2024 journal and notes. So when I go ahead and plan for the summer of 2025, I'm going to come reference this because this is what's going to help me to say, okay, I really liked those tomatoes or these cucumbers that worked, but I wasn't in love with let's say, another variety. And so instead of doing that variety, maybe I'll try this new cucumber that I was looking to try, but still keep the one that I absolutely loved and had good success. So for instance, the Poniente F1 cucumber, oh my goodness, you guys, by far, like one of my favorites, by far. And so let's say there's another cucumber. Some of these did well, but weren't like super favorite, you know, a favorite of mine. So I may say, instead of doing a straight 8, there's one I want to try differently. I might switch that out and try something different. So this is super helpful for me to be able to take notes for each bed, bag, and bucket. And so I just wanted to show this to you all, you know, and how I use this. It's a lot of chicken scratch, but it works very well for me. And I have really, really enjoyed it. So hopefully this sparks something for you guys as far as organizing or planning your garden. Now, if there's something specific, this is the bed I never got to plant because we didn't get the bed up in time. If there's something specific that you would like for me to go over, or if you want me to go over every season of my planner and journal, then I'll be happy to do that. Just leave a comment in the notes below. You can see I put happy faces. And then some are sad faces. My St. John's wort hasn't been doing the best. It's a lot of green, but doesn't really produce any flowers, so I'm pretty bummed about that. Anyways, I can keep going on and on because I do love to say, I could literally start an entire channel on even just organizing my house because I love to stay organized. And I like to take notes as far as, and you're gonna see there's some mud spots. I take this out to the garden and it gets messy, but you know, that's what it's for. So I hope this helps you all. And again, if you have any questions, if you'd like me to do something a little bit more in detail or whatever, please leave a comment in the description or leave a comment below. I would be happy to answer or share any more. All right, you guys, it is getting dark, but I wanted to show you an overview of the entire garden so that you can see what I mean about planning things out. So this is my bed 1, my bed 2, because I like to also, sorry for the focusing in and out. I really wanted to be outside to do this video, but it is getting dark out. But this is bed 2, bed 3, bed 4, which bed 1 and bed 4 are my overwinter pepper beds. And then we have bed 5, 6, 7. We have 8, 9. That's all the garlic that has 5 in that square and 9 in that square. And then that one is bed number 10 that we did not get a chance to put up until more recently. So, and then here's all the pallets. So here's the 4. I still have to put those 2 up, or my husband does. And there's the other 2 pallets, the trellis with the bags, and then those are all the bags that are in the middle. And then there's all the pallets and buckets and bags in the back. And then over here, okay, and then you can see right here, I have all the bags against the retaining wall and all of the green stalks that are lined up for the lower part of my garden. And then those are all of the metal beds as well. So friends, I hope that this was helpful for you by me going through my planner and journal and just explaining how I organize my garden and then how I utilize my binder as a organizer / journal to take notes, because not only do I personally feel better when I know my garden is somewhat organized, it's never going to be perfect because, again, plants die or squirrels eat your start and you have to replant or start seed over. And so it's never going to be fully 100% always organized. There's going to be hiccups or things that happen. But what this does is it helps me to stay as organized as much as possible. And then the other important part is that I'm able to journal. So then therefore, because I do remember things. Once you start, you know, if you are a gardener, you keep gardening and keep doing you know, the same thing every year or do, you know, different things every year. Some things you remember, but some things, for me anyways, I tend to forget. So being able to jot it down in my journal helps me to reference back as to, oh, that's right, that cucumber variety did not work very well. So I'm going to try something different this time. So again, I hope that this was helpful for you. If you have any questions, any comments or anything, feel free to leave them below and I will be happy to answer them or help you in any way. I appreciate you all stopping by all the time, and I really look forward to seeing you all next time. And always remember, friends, be encouraged, and always stay inspired. And I'll see y'all next time. Bye.